She was the woman who cleaned up after his million-dollar deals, invisible in her uniform while he conquered boardrooms in Armani. But on a Tuesday night, when loneliness finally cracked his billion-dollar armor, Anita Wilson made an offer that no amount of money could buy. One night of honesty, no pretense, no ulterior motives, just two broken people trying to remember what it felt like to be human. What's up, beautiful souls? Before we dive into this absolute roller coaster of a story, do me a quick favor, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Seriously, I want to know if you're team reading this at 2 a.m. or team procrastinating at work right now. And trust me, you'll want to be subscribed because tomorrow's story, even more intense than this one, you've been warned. Now let's get into it. The bottle of Macallan sat on Jefferson Ederson's desk like a monument to poor decisions. 25 years old, the Scotch, not him, and worth more than Anita made in 3 months. He'd already killed most of it, and the amber liquid swirled in his glass like liquid regret. An offer, Jefferson's laugh was bitter, sardonic. Let me guess, you want money. They always want money. How much? 10,000, 50. He reached for his checkbook with the weary resignation of a man who'd bought his way out of emotional complications before. I'll double whatever you're thinking. Just sign the NDA my lawyer will send over and... I don't want your money, Mr. Ederson. That stopped him. His hand froze halfway to the desk drawer. In his world, everyone wanted his money. It was the only currency that mattered, the only language people spoke around him. Hearing otherwise was like hearing someone speak ancient Sumerian in the middle of Manhattan. Then what? His blue eyes, bloodshot and suspicious, fixed on her face. Really looked at her for the first time. She was beautiful, he realized with a start, the kind of beautiful that didn't need a makeup artist or a stylist, with dark skin that seemed to glow under the office's recessed lighting and eyes that held something he'd forgotten existed. Sincerity. Anita set down her mop. The moment felt significant somehow, ceremonial, like she was putting down more than just cleaning supplies. I want one night, she said simply. One night where you're not Jefferson Ederson, billionaire, where you're just Jefferson, a person, and I'm just Anita. Not the help, not someone trying to climb some social ladder I don't even have access to. Just two people being real with each other. He stared at her like she'd suggested they fly to the moon, using nothing but positive thinking. Why? The question came out rough, suspicious. What's your angle? No angle. She moved closer, and he caught the scent of industrial cleaner mixed with something floral, jasmine, maybe. Cheap drugstore perfume that somehow smelled more honest than the designer fragrances. He was used to, I've been watching you for months, Mr. Ederson. You come in early, leave late. You never smile, not really. You eat lunch alone at your desk. You have everything, and you look like you have nothing. That's very poetic. Are you angling for a promotion to the psychology department? See that? She pointed at him, undeterred by his sarcasm. That defensive thing you do, the walls, I get it, I have them too. But just for one night, what if we both put them down? No expectations, no judgments, just connection. Remember that, human connection. Jefferson wanted to say no, should have said no. This was insane. She was the janitorial staff, for God's sake. He had board meetings, acquisitions, a company to run. He didn't have time for whatever philosophical social experiment this woman was proposing. But something in her eyes, that genuine, terrifying honesty, made him pause. One night, he heard himself say, as if someone else was operating his mouth. Doing what? Exactly. A smile broke across her face, transforming it from merely beautiful to something that made his chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with the Scotch. Whatever we want, we could talk, walk, grab pizza from that place on 34th that stays open all night, and no, not the one that charges $40 for truffle oil. The one where it's $3 a slice and tastes like heaven. We could sit in Central Park and watch the sunrise. We could, she paused, suddenly self-conscious. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. You probably think I'm crazy. I definitely think you're crazy, Jefferson said, but there was no bite to it. He stood up, swaying slightly. The scotch had done its job, loosening the iron control he usually kept on himself. But I'm drunk enough to say yes. What the hell, one night. Really? Her eyes widened like she hadn't actually expected him to agree. Really, but I have conditions. He held up a finger, trying to summon some of his usual boardroom authority and mostly failing. No phones, no social media, no posting pictures of me and the billionaire for your Instagram followers. This conversation never happened. Tomorrow we go back to our respective places in the grand hierarchy of capitalism. Deal. Anita extended her hand. Deal. Her palm was calloused from work, warm and real in a way that made his own soft, manicured hand feel like a lie. They shook, and Jefferson felt something shift in his chest, a crack in the foundation of his carefully constructed life. I need to change, he said, looking down at his $3,000 suit. Can't exactly be just Jefferson in Brioni. I'll wait. She settled into one of the leather chairs that cost more than her car, if she'd had a car. But hurry up, we're wasting moonlight. 20 minutes later, Jefferson emerged from his private bathroom in jeans, actual jeans he'd forgotten he owned, and a Columbia University sweatshirt from his college days. He'd washed his face, scrubbing away the expensive grooming products until he felt almost like himself. Or who he used to be anyway, before the money and the power and the loneliness had calcified around him like a second skin. Anita had changed too, somehow. She'd pulled off her janitorial uniform to reveal jeans and a purple blouse that hugged her curves and made his mouth go dry. Her hair, which had been pulled back in a practical bun, now fell in natural curls around her shoulders. You clean up nice, he said, then immediately felt stupid. Of course she did. She wasn't Cinderella, for God's sake. She was just a woman who'd been wearing a uniform. So do you, she said, grinning. You look almost human. Careful, I might start thinking you like me for my personality instead of my stock portfolio. Plot twist, she deadpanned. I have no idea what a stock portfolio is. I thought it was a type of briefcase. He laughed, actually laughed, a sound that felt foreign in his own throat, and offered her his arm like they were in some period drama, instead of standing in a Manhattan office tower at 2 a.m. Shall we, Ms. Wilson? She took it, and they walked toward the elevator together. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were walking toward something that would shatter both their worlds and remake them into something entirely new. The night stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and danger, and the kind of reckless hope that only comes when two lonely people decide to stop being careful for just a little while. The elevator descended through 42 floors of steel and ambition, and with each passing floor, Jefferson felt the weight of his life lifting. Or maybe that was just the scotch, hard to tell. So, Anita said, breaking the comfortable silence. First rule of Just Jefferson and Just Anita Knight, no job titles. I don't want to hear about quarterly earnings or mergers or whatever it is billionaires do when they're not swimming in vaults of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. That's a common misconception, Jefferson said seriously. The coins would actually cause severe bruising. We use bills much softer. She snorted an actual unladylike snort that no woman in his usual circles would have allowed herself. See, you do have a sense of humor under all that ice. It's not ice, it's permafrost. There's a difference. Yeah, what is it? Permafrost sounds more dramatic. I have a brand to maintain. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, where his night security guard, Roberto, looked up from his phone with surprise that quickly morphed into professional neutrality. Mr. Ederson, didn't expect to see you leaving this early. Early, Anita checked her watch. It's 2:30 in the morning. For him, that's early, Roberto said, then caught himself. Sorry, sir, didn't mean to. It's fine, Roberto. Jefferson paused, then did something he'd never done in 8 years of passing this man 5 nights a week. How's your daughter, Gabriella? Right, she was applying to colleges. Roberto's face transformed. You remembered. Yeah, she got into NYU, full scholarship. We're still trying to figure out housing, but he stopped, embarrassed by his own enthusiasm. Send me the details Monday, Jefferson said. I know some people in university housing might be able to help. As they walked toward the exit, Anita lined close. That was nice, the old you coming back. There is no old me, just different versions of the current disaster. Now who's being poetic? The November air hit them like a slap, cold and sharp and alive. New York at night was a different creature than its daytime self, quieter, stranger, full of secrets and possibility. The streets glistened with recent rain, reflecting neon and streetlights in abstract patterns. So where to? Jefferson asked. You're the tour guide for this expedition into normalcy. First stop, losing your security detail. He blinked. How did you? Please, there's a black SUV that's been parked across the street for the last 3 hours. Either you have security or someone's planning to kidnap you, and honestly, given your personality, it could go either way. Jefferson glanced at the SUV where Thompson sat with his coffee and newspaper, his head of security for 6 years, never more than 50 feet away, always watching, always ready, always there. It felt like a cage made of good intentions. Thompson, he called out. The SUV door opened and a bear of a man emerged, already assessing threats, hand moving instinctively toward the weapon Jefferson knew he carried. Sir, take the night off. Thompson's face did something complicated. Sir, I don't think. That's an order, not a request. Go home, see your wife. Do whatever it is people do at 2:30 in the morning when they're not babysitting billionaires. Mr. Ederson, the protocols are suspended for 1 night. I'll take full responsibility. Thompson looked between Jefferson and Anita, doing calculations that were probably both tactical and personal. Finally, he nodded, though he looked like it physically pained him. Your phone is on, GPS active. Yes, Mom. Sorry. Thompson, please, I need this. Something in Jefferson's voice must have conveyed the desperation he felt, because Thompson's expression softened. 1 night, but you call if anything feels wrong. The scout's honor. You were never a scout, sir. How would you know? Maybe I have depths. I've seen your background check. You were asked to leave Cub Scouts for entrepreneurial misuse of cookie sales. Anita burst out laughing. Oh my God, what did you do? I created a futures market for thin mints. It's not my fault the other kids didn't understand derivatives. Thompson shook his head, but there was affection in it. Call me if you need me. He climbed back into the SUV and after one last long look pulled away from the curb. And just like that, Jefferson Ederson was alone in New York City, really alone for the first time in 8 years. How does it feel? Anita asked softly. Terrifying, like standing on a ledge. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? He considered. I'll let you know if I survive it. They started walking, no particular destination in mind. The city unfolded around them in layers of light and shadow. A homeless man huddled in a doorway, and Jefferson felt Anita slow reach into her purse. Here, she handed the man a $5 bill, probably a significant amount for her, given what he knew she made. The man's weathered face cracked into a smile. "God bless you, miss." "Already blessed," she said gently, just passing it forward. They walked another block before Jefferson spoke. "You gave him probably an hour's worth of your wages." "So he needed it more than I need. I don't know, whatever $5 buys coffee." That was a $7 latte's worth of money. Actually, downtown prices. See, this is why poor people are better than rich people. We understand actual math. I understand actual math. I majored in economics. Yeah, but you do it with commas. That's not real math. Real math is figuring out how to stretch $17 across 3 meals. Jefferson found himself fascinated by this glimpse into a world that existed parallel to his own. "Do you do that often? Stretch $17? "Sometimes, other times I stretch 14. I'm very versatile." "That's not funny." "It is actually. You just have to have the right sense of humor. Poverty humor is like British humor, very dry, often dark, and incomprehensible to outsiders." They reached the pizza place she'd mentioned, a hole-in-the-wall joint with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly jaundiced. The smell hit him immediately: garlic, grease, and something indefinably wonderful that no Michelin-starred restaurant had ever managed to replicate. "2 slices," Anita told the bored teenager behind the counter. "Pepperoni." "Make it 4, Jefferson added, "and whatever else looks good." The kid's eyes widened slightly, probably recognizing him, but said nothing. New Yorkers were good at pretending they didn't notice things. They took their paper plates to a corner booth with ripped vinyl seats and a table that wobbled. Jefferson bit into his slice and nearly groaned. It was objectively terrible, greasy, floppy, probably violating several health codes. It was also the best thing he'd tasted in years. "Good, right," Anita watched him with satisfaction. "This is either amazing or I'm having a stroke." "Same thing, really." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, a taxi honked. Someone shouted in Spanish. A siren wailed past, the symphony of the city that never stopped, never rested, never apologized for being itself. "Can I ask you something?" Jefferson said finally. "That's the whole point of tonight, isn't it? Actual conversation. Why did you really ask for this? One night, there has to be more to it." Anita set down her slice, considering. Her expression turned serious, vulnerable in a way that made his chest tight. "Because I've been invisible my whole life," she said quietly. "Growing up poor black in a town where people looked through me like I was glass. Moving here thinking things would be different, but they're not. I'm still invisible. I clean your office and you don't see me. I pass people on the street and they don't see me. I exist in the margins of other people's stories." She looked up and her eyes were bright with unshed tears and something fiercer, defiance, maybe, or hope. "But tonight, when you looked at me, really looked at me, I wasn't invisible anymore. And I thought, what if we could both be visible? Just for one night, what if we could both be real?" Jefferson felt something crack open inside him, some calcified thing he'd protected for so long he'd forgotten. It was there. "I'm tired of being invisible, too," he admitted. "Different kind of invisible, maybe. Everyone sees Jefferson Ederson. Nobody sees me. So let's see each other, really see each other. No bullshit, no pretense." "No bullshit," he agreed. She raised her paper cup of Coke to visibility. He clinked his cup against hers, feeling ridiculous and somehow more alive than he had in years. To visibility. What neither of them knew was that 3 blocks away, in another expensive restaurant with another beautiful woman, someone was taking photos. Someone who would recognize Jefferson despite the casual clothes. Someone who would make sure this impossible night had very real consequences. But that was later. For now, they just ate cheap pizza and talked, really talked, while the city hummed around them and something fragile and dangerous bloomed between them like a flower growing through concrete. They left the pizza place near 3:30, bellies full and defenses down. Walking without purpose through streets that belonged to the night shift workers, the insomniacs, and the dreamers, Jefferson felt lighter than he had in years, like someone had untethered him from gravity itself. "Okay, real talk time," Anita said, linking her arm through his with an ease that surprised them both. "What's your actual deal? Not the Forbes profile version, the real story." "That's a dangerous question. It's a dangerous night." Jefferson breathed out slowly, watching his breath fog in the November air. When was the last time he'd been genuinely honest with someone? When was the last time someone had asked? "My father built everything," he started. "Ederson Real Estate, the tower, the empire. He was brilliant, ruthless, cold, the kind of man who saw the world as a chessboard and people as pieces to be moved. When I was 8, I asked him if he loved me. You know what he said?" "What?" "He said, 'Love is a liability, Jefferson. I'm preparing you for success.' Which is more valuable than affection?" Then he went back to his spreadsheets. Jefferson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I spent 20 years trying to prove I could be just as ruthless, just as successful, and I did it, quadrupled his fortune, became everything he wanted, and you know the ironic part." "Tell me." "He died before I could show him. Heart attack in his office, face down in a contract worth $200 million, and my very first thought wasn't grief. It was, did he see the Q3 numbers? Did he know I beat his projections?" His voice cracked slightly. What kind of person thinks about quarterly earnings when their father dies? Anita stopped walking, turned to face him. The streetlight above them flickered, casting strange shadows across her face. The kind of person who was taught that numbers were the only language worth speaking. "That's not your fault, Jefferson." "Isn't it? I had choices. I could have been different." "Could you?" Though really, she touched his face gently, and the intimacy of it shocked him. "We're all just products of our programming until we decide to rewrite the code. Maybe tonight is you starting to rewrite yours." He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. "What's your code? What made Anita Wilson who she is?" "That's a long story. We've got time." She smiled sadly. "Okay, fair's fair. My code is survival. My dad was a factory worker in Nebraska, good man, strong man, the kind who believed if you worked hard enough, everything would be okay. Then the factory closed, then he got sick, cancer. No insurance, no savings, just medical bills that piled up like some kind of sick joke. My mom worked 3 jobs trying to keep us afloat. I was 16, watching my father disappear a little more each day, watching my mother break herself trying to hold us together." Her voice was steady, but Jefferson could hear the tremors underneath. "He died owing $400,000. $400,000 for the privilege of dying slowly and painfully. And you know what I learned?" "What?" "That the world doesn't care about hard work or goodness or playing by the rules. It cares about money, about who has it and who doesn't. The rules are different for people like you and people like me, and pretending otherwise is just naive." She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "So I came to New York with this stupid idea that I'd make something of myself, prove that his death meant something. But I'm still just scraping by, still drowning, still." "Still surviving," Jefferson finished. "Still fighting." "Is that what you call it?" because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like losing. No, he said it with a certainty that surprised him. No, Anita, you're here, you're still dreaming. You haven't let it break you. That's not losing. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard. She looked at him, really looked, and something passed between them, understanding, recognition, a shared acknowledgement of wounds that might never fully heal, but at least could be witnessed. How did we get so sad? She asked, laughing shakily. This was supposed to be fun, one night of being human, remember. Humans are sad sometimes, it's part of the package. Yeah, but we're also resilient and ridiculous, and she grabbed his hand. Come on, I know where we need to go. She pulled him through the streets with purpose now, and Jefferson let himself be led. They walked past shuttered shops and 24-hour delis, past couples stumbling home from bars and shift workers heading to early morning jobs. The city was changing around them, that magical hour when night hadn't quite surrendered to dawn but both existed simultaneously. They ended up at the High Line, the elevated park built on old railroad tracks. At this hour it was mostly empty, a few other insomniacs, a couple of security guards who nodded at them without real interest. Like come. Here sometimes, Anita said softly, leading him to a bench overlooking the Hudson. When everything feels too heavy, something about being up here, above it all but still part of it. I don't know, it helps. They sat, and the silence between them was comfortable now, familiar. The river glittered below, reflecting the lights of the city and the first hints of dawn creeping across the horizon. Can I ask you something potentially offensive? Anita said. After the night we've had, ask away. Do you ever think about just walking away from all of it? The money, the company, the expectations, just becoming someone else entirely. Jefferson considered. A month ago, even a week ago, he would have said no immediately. The company was his identity, his purpose, his proof of worth. But sitting here with this woman who'd seen through his armor to the broken person underneath, the question didn't seem absurd. Sometimes, he admitted, late at night when I can't sleep, I imagine what it would be like to be no one, just another person with an ordinary job and ordinary problems. But then morning comes and the thought seems ridiculous. I have responsibilities, employees who depend on me, shareholders, commitments. Cages, Anita said gently. Golden cages, but cages all the same. What about you? If you could be anyone, do anything, money no object, what would you do? She didn't hesitate. I'd write, really write, not just poetry in margins. I'd tell stories about people like me, people who exist in the shadows of cities like this. I'd make us visible. She laughed self-consciously. Stupid dream, right? Like the world needs another struggling writer. It's not stupid. Jefferson turned to face her fully. You know what's stupid? Having all the resources in the world to make dreams happen and being too afraid to actually dream. At least you still have that. At least you still have hope. Is that what you think you've lost, hope? I don't know what I've lost anymore. I just know something's missing. Anita reached over and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. The gesture was simple, natural, and it made Jefferson's heart stutter in his chest. Maybe that's what tonight is about, she said. Finding what's missing, or at least admitting it's gone so you can start looking for it. They sat like that as the sky began to lighten, holding hands like teenagers, like people who weren't separated by impossible divides of wealth and circumstance and social stratification. For just a moment, they were exactly what she'd asked for, just Jefferson and just Anita, two people trying to remember how to be human. The sun's coming up, Jefferson said quietly. Yeah, that means the night's almost over. Yeah, neither of them moved. Anita, I don't want this to end. She squeezed his hand. It has to. That was the deal. One night, then back to reality. What if I want to renegotiate? She turned to look at him, and her eyes were sad and understanding and something else, something that looked like longing. Jefferson, it's not real, it's a fantasy. A beautiful fantasy, but tomorrow you're still a billionaire and I'm still the woman who mops your floors. That doesn't just go away. I could. What, write me a check, offer me a job I'm not qualified for, make me your pet project. Her voice was gentle but firm. I'm not a charity case and I'm not some pretty woman's story waiting to happen. This was one night of honesty. Let's not ruin it with impossible promises. But here's the thing, when you find someone who sees you, really sees you, is it actually possible to just walk away? Or is that the real fantasy, pretending you can unknow someone's soul once they've shown it to you? Jefferson wanted to argue, to use logic and reason and all the skills that had made him a billionaire. But looking at her face, at the resignation and longing warring in her expression, he understood. She was protecting herself, from him, from hope, from the inevitable disappointment that came from wanting things you couldn't have. I knew because he was doing the same thing. Okay, he said finally, one night as promised. As promised, she echoed. But neither of them let go of the other's hand. The sun climbed higher, painting the Hudson in shades of gold and amber, and with each passing minute, Jefferson felt reality reasserting itself like a slow-acting poison. His phone, which he'd silenced hours ago, buzzed insistently in his pocket. The world was waking up, and with it came all the obligations he'd temporarily abandoned. But not yet, not quite yet. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he said suddenly. Anita raised an eyebrow. Getting greedy with our confessions, aren't we? We have maybe an hour left before we turn back into pumpkins. I want to know something real, something that's just mine. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunrise. Paint the world in impossible colors. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Sometimes I'm so tired of being strong that I fantasize about just disappearing. Not dying, I'm not suicidal or anything, just ceasing to exist in this particular configuration. Becoming someone else somewhere else, where nobody needs me to be brave or resilient or inspiring, where I can just be small and quiet and not have to fight every single day. Jefferson felt his throat tighten. That's the most honest thing anyone's ever said to me. Your turn, something you've never told anyone. He didn't hesitate. I'm lonely, not I wish I had more friends lonely. Soul-deep, existential lonely. The kind where you can be in a room full of people and still feel like you're watching from behind glass. I have everything anyone could want, and I'd trade it all for one person who actually gave a damn about Jefferson instead of Jefferson Ederson's bank account. That's heartbreaking. That's life. No, she said firmly. That's what you've settled for. There's a difference. Before he could respond, his phone rang, not the usual buzz, but the emergency ringtone he'd set for exactly 3 people. His assistant, his lawyer, and his head of PR. I have to take this, he said apologetically. Reality calling. Something like that. He walked a few feet away, answered, Mitchell, this better be important. His PR director's voice was tight with controlled panic. Sir, we have a situation. There are photos of you from last night. Jefferson's blood went cold. What photos? You and a woman getting pizza, walking through the city. Very casual, very unlike you. TMZ has them. So does Page 6. They're asking who she is, speculating about. Kill it. Sir, I can't kill something that's already viral. It's trending on Twitter. Billionaire slumming is the #1 hashtag in New York right now. Jefferson closed his eyes. Of course, this couldn't just be one pure, uncomplicated thing. The universe wouldn't allow it. What do you need from me? Damage control, a statement. We can spin this as philanthropy. You were doing research for a charitable initiative, interviewing workers to understand their needs. It's thin, but it might work if we move fast. And the woman. Mitchell hesitated. We need to know who she is. If she's employed by you, that complicates things. If she's not, well, the narrative gets messy either way. Jefferson looked back at Anita, who was watching the sunrise, unaware that their impossible night was about to become very public, very real, and very complicated. "I'll call you back," he said, and hung up. He stood there for a moment, paralyzed by the diverging paths in front of him. He could do what Mitchell suggested, turn this into a PR opportunity, reduce Anita to a footnote in his philanthropic narrative, protect his image and his empire. It was the smart play, the safe play, the play his father would have made without hesitation. Or he could choose differently. He walked back to the bench, and Anita took one look at his face and knew. It's over, isn't it, the fantasy? There are photos from last night, the media has them. Her face went pale. Oh God, I'm going to lose my job. Mrs. Chen has a strict policy about fraternizing with. You're not going to lose your job. You don't know that, you don't know what it's like to be. She stopped, wrapped her arms around herself. I can't afford to lose this job, Jefferson. I can barely afford life with it. He sat beside her, took her hands. Listen to me, you have options. I can make this go away. My PR team can spin it so you're completely protected. We can say it was exactly what it was, two people having a conversation. Nothing inappropriate, nothing scandalous. But that means we go back to how things were. You're the janitor, I'm the billionaire. We pretend last night never happened. And the alternative. This was it, the moment where Jefferson Ederson, who'd built an empire on calculated risks and careful analysis, had to make the least calculated decision of his life. The alternative is we don't pretend. We acknowledge that something happened last night, something real, and we see where it goes. Anita pulled her hands back. Jefferson, that's insane. You're not thinking clearly. It's been a long night. Emotions are high, but in the cold light of day. In the cold light of day, I still think you're the most interesting person I've met in a decade. In the cold light of day, I still want to know what your favorite book is and what you dream about and what makes you laugh until you can't breathe. That's not enough. That can't be enough. Why not? Because, she stood up, pacing, because we live in different worlds, because your ex-fiancée probably had her own trust fund and I have $37 in my checking account, because people will say I'm using you for money and you're using me for, I don't know, some kind of poverty tourism or white savior complex, or do you think that's what this is? She stopped pacing, looked at him with eyes that held too much understanding. No, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the world thinks. And the world is really good at destroying things that don't fit into neat categories. So we let them win. We walk away because it's too complicated. We walk away because it's impossible. Her voice cracked. Jefferson, I can't be your project. I can't be the interesting poor girl who made you feel alive for a night. I need to be my own person, fighting my own battles, living my own life. That's not what I'm suggesting. Isn't it though, really? Because from where I'm standing, any relationship between us is inherently unequal. You have all the power, all the resources, all the control, and I'd just be, what, the grateful recipient of your attention. Jefferson felt something breaking inside him, something that might have been hope. So that's it. one night exactly as promised, and then we're strangers again. Not strangers, she moved closer, cupped his face in her hands. Never strangers, but not us, because there is no us, Jefferson. There's you and there's me, and those are two separate things that can't become one thing just because we want them to. She kissed him then, soft and brief and tasting like regret. It was the first time their lips had touched all night, and it felt like both a beginning and an ending. "Go back to your empire," she whispered against his mouth. "Let me go back to mine. Let's keep last night perfect by not ruining it with reality." She pulled away, and Jefferson wanted to grab her, to argue, to use every skill he'd honed in boardrooms to negotiate a different outcome. But he saw the determination in her eyes, the self-protection, and he understood. She was right about all of it. Didn't make it hurt any less. "For what it's worth," he said, "last night was the most real thing that's happened to me in 10 years. "For me too," she admitted. Then, with visible effort, she straightened her spine, became someone else, someone harder, more protected. "Goodbye, Mr. Ederson." "Oneita." But she was already walking away, down the high line toward the stairs, toward whatever came next. She didn't look back. Jefferson knew because he watched until she disappeared from view, committing every detail to memory. The way she moved, the set of her shoulders, the purple blouse that had seemed so right in the darkness and now looked heartbreaking in the dawn. His phone rang again. Mitchell, probably, or Thompson, or any of the dozen people whose job it was to manage his life and keep the machine running smoothly. He answered, "I'm coming in. Prep the conference room. We need to handle this." "Yes, sir. What do you want the narrative to be?" Jefferson looked at the sunrise, at the city waking up. Below him, at the spot where Anita had stood just moments before. "The truth," he said. "For once in my life, let's just tell the truth." He hung up and started walking back toward his tower, toward his life, toward everything that was waiting for him. But something had shifted. Some fundamental calculus had changed. One night, she'd asked for one night, and he'd given it. But what she'd given him in return, a glimpse of who he could be, who he wanted to be, that wasn't something that ended with sunrise. That was something that changed everything. Even if she walked away. Even if he let her. 3 weeks later, Jefferson stood in his office and understood what purgatory felt like. The PR crisis had been managed with Mitchell's usual efficiency. The narrative became, Billionaire takes unexpected night off to understand his employees better, engages in impromptu research on work-life balance. Anita was never named, never identified beyond a member of the evening maintenance staff. The story died within 48 hours, buried under celebrity scandals and political drama. Everything went back to normal. Except nothing was normal. Jefferson went through the motions, board meetings, acquisitions, the endless machinery of wealth generation. He closed a deal worth $300 million and felt nothing. He was featured on the cover of Fortune with the headline, "The Man Who Never Stops," and thought about how desperately he wanted to stop. He never saw Anita again. She'd switched to a different building in his portfolio, he discovered through discreet inquiry. Different shift, different floors, different world. She'd made sure their paths would never cross, and he respected that even as it gutted him. His assistant noticed. "Sir, you've been staring at that contract for 20 minutes. "Have I?" Jefferson looked down at the papers that meant nothing. "Cancel my afternoon meetings." "All of them, sir. You have the Zhao Industries negotiation at 3. Cancel them." He left the office, ignoring the startled looks from his staff. Thompson fell into step beside him, professional concern radiating off him like heat. "Sir, is everything all right?" Define all right, Thompson. You haven't been yourself since, he stopped tactfully. Since I had one night of being human, yeah, turns out that ruins you for the alternative. He didn't go home. Instead, he found himself at the High Line at the same bench where he'd watched the sunrise with Anita. It was afternoon now, crowded with tourists and joggers and people living their ordinary lives. He sat there like an idiot, hoping for what? That she'd magically appear, that the universe would grant him a second impossible night. Thought I might find you here. Jefferson's heart stopped, but when he turned, it wasn't Anita. It was Thompson, holding 2 cups of coffee, looking uncomfortable in the way men do when they're about to have feelings. How long have you been following? About 10 years, sir. It's literally my job. Thompson sat down uninvited, handed him a coffee. We going to talk about what's really going on? No. Okay, then I'll talk. You listen. Thompson took a sip of his coffee, grimaced. You know I've been married 23 years. I did not. Yeah, met Susan when I was 25, working security at a department store. She was a cashier. I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He smiled at the memory. Took me 6 months to work up the courage to ask her out. You know why? Thompson, I really don't. Because I was scared, because she was too good for me, because I thought she'd say no and I'd have to see her every day after that, knowing she'd rejected me. So I waited, made excuses, convinced myself the timing wasn't right. He turned to look at Jefferson directly. Then one day I watched her leave with another guy. Turned out he'd asked her out the week before, and you know what I learned? That life is full of disappointment. That regret tastes worse than rejection. I spent the next year trying to get her back. Eventually succeeded, obviously, but that year was hell, and it was hell I created by being a coward. Jefferson was quiet for a long moment. This is about Anita. This is about you being miserable. I don't care if it's about Anita or the Queen of England. You're not sleeping, not eating right, and you look like someone stole your soul. So either do something about it or accept this is your life now. She doesn't want to see me. Have you asked her? She made it clear. 3 weeks ago, people's feelings change, circumstances change. You don't know until you ask. Thompson, she switched buildings to avoid me. That's not exactly an engraved invitation. So you're just going to respect that, give up. The guy who turned 100 million into a billion by refusing to take no for an answer is going to accept defeat from one. Woman, that's different, business is. Easier, Thompson finished. Yeah, that's why cowards hide in boardrooms instead of dealing with their actual lives. Jefferson wanted to be angry, but Thompson had been with him too long, earned too much honest currency. What if you're wrong? What if I show up and she tells me to leave? Then you'll know and you can move on, but right now you're in limbo, and let me tell you, limbo is the worst place to live. Trust me, I spent a year there. Thompson stood up, straightened his jacket. I'm taking the rest of the day off. Susan's been nagging me about this new Italian place. You gonna be okay? I don't know. Good, that's the first honest thing you've said in 3 weeks. He paused. For what it's worth, I saw how you looked at her that night, and sir, I've been watching you for a decade. I've never seen you look like that at anyone. After Thompson left, Jefferson sat there for another hour, wrestling with fear and hope, and the kind of terrifying vulnerability that had no place in his carefully controlled world. Then he made a decision. He pulled out his phone, made 3 calls. The first to Mitchell, clear my schedule for the next month, personal leave. The second to his assistant, I need an address, quietly, no paper trail. The third to a number he hadn't called in 5 years, Dr. Morrison, it's Jefferson Ederson. I think I'm ready to talk about my father. Because Thompson was right, he could keep hiding in his empire, surrounded by money and power and the illusion of control. Or he could do the terrifying thing, admit he was broken, ask for help, and fight for something that actually mattered. 3 weeks ago, Anita had asked for one night. She'd given him a glimpse of who he could be if he stopped being afraid. Time to see if he had the courage to actually become that person. Meanwhile, across the city, Anita Wilson mopped floors in a different building and told herself she'd made the right choice. She almost believed it. The new building was quieter, cleaner, less prestigious. The kind of place where young startups leased space and everyone was too busy disrupting industries to notice the woman cleaning up after them. It paid the same. The work was the same. Everything was the same. Except she couldn't stop thinking about him. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours of trying to convince herself that one night with Jefferson Ederson had been enough. That walking away had been the smart, self-protective thing to do. Her coworker Maria noticed, "Girl, you need to either call him or get over him. This moping thing is depressing." "I'm not moping. You're writing poetry on paper towels. That's next-level moping." Anita looked down at the paper towel in her hand, where she'd unconsciously written. His hands held mine like promises too expensive to keep, too precious to forget. "Okay, maybe I'm moping a little." "So-called him. I can't. We agreed one night." "Agreements can be renegotiated. It's called being an adult." "It's not that simple. Because he's rich and you're not. Because everything between us is impossible. The money, the class difference, the fact that I literally cleaned his office. How do you build something real on that foundation?" Maria rolled her eyes. "Honey, every relationship is impossible until it isn't. My parents came from different countries, spoke different languages, had families that hated each other. They've been married 40 years. Love doesn't care about your resume. This isn't love, it was one night of. Of what? Connection, honesty, seeing each other as actual human beings." Maria softened. "Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but I know you've been different since. Sadder, like you left part of yourself somewhere and can't figure out how to get it back." Anita felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm scared, Maria." "Of what?" "Of hoping, of wanting something I can't have, of being disappointed again." She wiped her eyes roughly. "My whole life has been wanting things I can't have, being smart but not able to afford college, being talented but not having the connections, watching my father die because we couldn't afford treatment. I learned to stop hoping because hope is expensive and I'm broke." "So you're going to live the rest of your life playing it safe." "I'm going to live the rest of my life being realistic." "Those aren't the same thing, and you know it." Before Anita could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "There's a package for you at the front desk. J." Her heart stopped. "Oh God." "What?" I think he found me." Maria grinned. "Well, don't just stand there. Go see what the billionaire sent you." Anita's hands shook as she took the elevator down to the lobby. The security guard handed her a small box, no bigger than a book, wrapped in plain brown paper. No card, no explanation. She opened it in the bathroom because some moments needed privacy. Inside was a leather journal, expensive but not ostentatious, the kind of thing a writer might actually use. And tucked inside the first page, a note in handwriting she recognized from signatures on corporate memos. "You said you wanted to write stories about people in the shadows. This is me, officially requesting to hear those stories. No pressure, no expectations, just someone who believes you have something worth saying." Also enclosed, an application to Columbia's MFA program, fully funded scholarship, established yesterday by an anonymous donor who thinks talent matters more than bank accounts. They're accepting late applications. I'm not trying to fix your life or save you. You don't need saving. I just wanted to remove one obstacle between you and your dreams. If you never want to see me again, I'll understand, but I hope you'll use this journal. The world needs your stories. Jefferson, P.S. I started therapy. Turns out you were right about a lot of things. Anita sat on the closed toilet lid and cried ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and previously protected. Not because of the scholarship, though that was overwhelming. Not because of the journal, though that was thoughtful. But because someone powerful and important had actually listened, had heard her dreams and thought they mattered, had given her not a handout but a hand up, had seen her not as invisible but as essential. Maria found her 10 minutes later, mascara running, clutching the journal like a lifeline. "So," Maria said, grinning, "you gonna call him or what?" Anita stood outside Ederson Tower at 7 p.m. on a Friday, clutching the journal like armor. She'd spent 3 days arguing with herself, writing and rewriting texts she never sent, pacing her apartment until her downstairs neighbor complained about the noise. In the end, it was simple. She could not see him. That was the truth beneath all her fears and justifications. She needed to look him in the eye and understand if that night had been real or just a beautiful fever dream. The lobby was different at this hour, emptier, quieter, the daytime energy replaced with something more hushed. Roberto was at his desk, and his face broke into a surprised smile when he saw her. "Miss Wilson didn't expect to see you." "Is he," she cleared her throat, "is Mr. Ederson in his office?" "He is, been there all day actually. You want me to call up?" "No, I'll just go." Roberto's smile turned knowing. Elevator on the right, you remember the floor. The elevator ride felt eternal. Anita watched the numbers climb 10, 20, 30, 40, and with each floor her heart beat faster. What was she doing? This was insane. She should turn around, go home, apply for the scholarship, the scholarship, and move on with her life. But the elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor, and her feet carried her forward anyway. Jefferson's office door was open. He sat at his desk, but instead of contracts or computers, he was surrounded by books. Actual physical books, dozens of them, stacked haphazardly like he'd been researching something urgent. "Anita," he stood so fast his chair rolled backward. He looked different, tired, rumpled, more human. His hair wasn't perfectly styled. His tie was loose. He looked like he'd aged and de-aged simultaneously, like he'd shed some carefully maintained facade. "Hi," she managed. "I got your package." "The journal, right, I hope I wasn't trying to." He ran his hand through his hair, flustered in a way she'd never seen him. "I'm actually terrible at this." "At what?" "Trying to show someone I care about them without using money. Turns out when you're rich, money is the easy answer to everything. Emotions are much harder." Despite her nerves, Anita smiled. The journal was perfect. The scholarship was. Jefferson, that was too much. "It wasn't enough," he said intensely. "I wanted to do more, but my therapist, I have a therapist now, go figure. She said I needed to learn boundaries and that grand gestures can be a form of control," and he stopped, laughed at himself. "I'm rambling. I've been practicing what to say if you came, and now you're here and it's all gone." "Just talk to me like that night, no scripts." He nodded, came around the desk but didn't approach her, keeping distance, respecting boundaries. "I've been doing a lot of thinking and reading," he gestured to the books, "about class, privilege, systemic inequality, the ethics of wealth. Turns out I've been living in a bubble my entire life and didn't even know it. Jefferson. No, let me finish, please. He took a breath. You were right about everything. The power imbalance, the complications, the impossibility of us, all of it. And I could come here and tell you I've figured it out, that I have solutions to problems that are literally centuries old, but I don't. I'm just one guy who's been privileged his entire life and is only now realizing what that means. So why am I here? Because despite all of that, despite the impossibility and the complications and the thousand reasons this is a bad idea, I can't stop thinking about you, not in some obsessive way, just, you made me want to be better, and I am trying to be better. I'm in therapy, I'm reading, I'm looking at my company's labor practices and realizing they're exploitative and trying to fix that. I'm donating to causes I never thought about before. I'm actually trying to use this ridiculous wealth for something meaningful. He moved closer, cautious, like approaching something wild and precious. But I'm not doing it to impress you or win you back. I'm doing it because that night showed me who I could be, and I want to be that person, whether you're in my life or not. Anita felt her eyes burn. That's really growth-oriented of you. My therapist would be proud I'm trying to do the work or whatever. He smiled sadly. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope you'd be part of that journey, not as some symbol or project, but as you, just Anita, the woman who sees through bullshit and writes poetry on margins and asked a billionaire for one night of honesty. And what would that look like, us? I don't know, he admitted. That's the terrifying part. I've always had plans, strategies, 5-year projections, but this, I have no idea. We'd have to figure it out as we go. Make mistakes, probably argue about money and privilege and all the ways our worlds don't fit together. That sounds exhausting. Probably, but also real. Actually real, not fantasy real. Anita set the journal on his desk, and for a moment he looked devastated, like she was giving it back. But then she moved closer into his space, close enough to see the vulnerability in his eyes. I'm still scared, she said softly. I'm still broke, still working night shifts, still drowning in debt. I know, and I can't fix that for you. My therapist was very clear about that. Apparently rescuing is a trauma response, and I need to learn to sit with discomfort instead of throwing money at it. She laughed wetly. You really are in therapy. Twice a week, it's humbling. He reached up slowly, giving her time to move away, and cupped her face. But I can stand beside you. I can be someone you trust, someone who sees you, someone who thinks your dreams matter as much as any billion-dollar deal, if you'll let me. What if people talk? What if they say I'm a gold digger or you're slumming? Let them talk. I've spent my whole life worried about what people think. And you know what? It made me miserable. Maybe it's time to worry about what I think instead, what I feel. And what do you feel? Jefferson leaned his forehead against hers, and it felt like coming home. Like I'd be an idiot to let you walk away twice, like one night wasn't enough. Like maybe, if you're willing, we could have 1,000 nights and see where they led. Anita closed her eyes, felt tears slip down her cheeks. I wrote 30 pages in the journal, all about you, very embarrassing poetry. Can I read it? Absolutely not. But I inspired it. Doesn't that give me rights? You're a billionaire, not a publisher. Different kind of rights. He laughed, really laughed, and the sound filled something hollow in her chest. God, I missed you. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I missed you too, she admitted. I tried not to, told myself I was being stupid, that one night couldn't mean anything real, but it did. Yeah, it really did. They stood there, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air, while outside the windows Manhattan twinkled with a million other stories, a million other impossible things that somehow became possible. So what now? Anita whispered. Now we figure it out. One day at a time, no guarantees, no grand plans, just us being honest, being real, being whatever this turns into. That's not very billionaire of you. Where's the 10-point strategy? I'm learning to embrace uncertainty. It's very uncomfortable. My therapist is pleased. She pulled back enough to look at him properly. Okay, but we have rules, real rules, not one-night rules. I'm listening. 1, you don't solve my problems with money. I need to figure my own life out. Agreed, though if you need someone to brainstorm solutions that don't involve money, I'm available. 2, we go slow, like glacially slow. I need to know this is real, not just some fantasy we're both projecting onto each other. I can do slow, I mean I'll hate it, but I can do it. 3, if this doesn't work, if we try and it falls apart, we promise to be honest about it. No dragging it out, no trying to force something that isn't there. Jefferson's expression turned serious, and if it does work, then maybe we get to have more than one night. Maybe we get a whole life. I like those odds. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. It tasted like hope and fear and the beginning of something that had no business working but just might anyway. When they finally pulled apart, Anita was grinning. So, since we're going glacially slow, want to get pizza? The $3 place or the truffle oil place? Oh, we're definitely going to have philosophical arguments about pizza, aren't we? Among other things, I have very strong opinions about toppings. Of course you do, you're a billionaire. You probably have strong opinions about air. Only about the quality. I had it tested once. She stared at him. You're joking. I wish I was, my father insisted. Oh my God, I'm dating a supervillain. Dating, his face lit up like she just closed a $1 billion deal. Is that what we're doing? Slow, Jefferson, glacially slow. Remember. Right, slow, I can be slow. He grabbed his jacket, turned off his desk lamp. Should I have Thompson drive us? We're taking the subway like normal people. The subway, he looked genuinely nervous. I haven't taken the subway since college. Then tonight, you're going to remember what it's like to be normal, or at least my version of normal. As they walked to the elevator, Jefferson caught her hand, threaded their fingers together. The gesture was simple, natural, and it made Anita's heart do something complicated in her chest. Hey, he said softly. Hey yourself. Thank you for coming back, for giving us a chance. Thank you for being worth coming back to. The elevator arrived and they stepped in together. As the doors closed, Anita caught their reflection in the polished steel, a billionaire and a janitor, holding hands, heading toward something impossible and terrifying and maybe, just maybe, real. One night had changed everything, but it turned out one night was just the beginning. 6 months later, Jefferson stood in a small bookstore in Brooklyn, surrounded by people who'd never heard of Ederson Tower and didn't care about his net worth. Anita was at the front, reading from her first published essay, part of a collection about invisible workers in New York City. Her voice was steady, confident, beautiful. The audience was rapt. Jefferson stood in the back, deliberately unremarkable in jeans and a sweater, and felt pride swell in his chest. She'd done this herself, applied to Columbia's program and gotten in, wrote the essay, submitted it, fought for it. All he'd done was show up to her readings and remind her she was brilliant when she got rejection letters. Well, that and fundamentally restructure his company's labor practices and establish a foundation for workers' rights, and start actually paying attention to the people who made his empire function. Therapy was expensive, but it turned out facing your trauma was worth it. After the reading, as people lined up to talk to Anita, Jefferson slipped out. He'd learned to give her space for her own accomplishments, to not overshadow her moments with his presence. He was halfway down the block when he heard her call his name. "Jefferson, where are you going?" He turned. She was running after him, hair flying, eyes bright with joy and something else, something that looked like love. "I thought you'd want to celebrate with your friends," he said. "I want to celebrate with you, you idiot." She crashed into him and he caught her laughing. She stopped, suddenly shy. "You're my person. You're supposed to be there for the big moments." "I didn't want to be the billionaire boyfriend who steals focus." "Oh, we're using the B word now," she grinned. "Boyfriend. Unless you prefer the person I'm glacially dating." "Boyfriend works." She kissed him there on the Brooklyn sidewalk, and he didn't care who saw, who took pictures, who had opinions. "Come back inside, I want you there." "Your essay was incredible, by the way." "I know," she said it without arrogance, just certainty. "I'm actually good at this, like really good." "I know you are, I've always known." "Yeah, well, now I know too, that's the difference." They walked back to the bookstore hand in hand, and Jefferson thought about one night 3 weeks ago, no, 6 months ago, when a woman in a janitor's uniform had asked him for one night of honesty. She'd given him so much more than that. She'd given him a reason to be better, a purpose beyond profit, a life beyond the empire his father had built. And in return, he'd just shown up, consistently, honestly, imperfectly. Turned out that was enough. Turned out that was everything. Sometimes the most impossible love stories are the ones that force us to become who we were always meant to be. Jefferson found his humanity. Anita found her voice, and together they found something neither knew they were missing, someone who saw them, really saw them, and loved them anyway. The janitor asked for one night with the billionaire. He didn't hesitate, and that night changed everything, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And real, messy, complicated love, that's the kind worth fighting for.